This man is sitting in a darkened room 600 miles north of the Arctic Circle. He's looking for something, and he hopes he never sees it. When a moonshot or space probe is launched anywhere in the Soviet Union, the men in this room know about it. Their radar scopes are like windows through which they can see 3,000 miles or more into the vast reaches of space over the Eurasian landmass. Satellites whirl by with clock-like regularity, and they log them in by the numbers. But their main interest is in something else. They've never seen it, but they'd recognize it instantly. A mass raid of intercontinental ballistic missiles launched against the United States and Canada. This is the Tactical Operations Room, the TOR, of Site 1 BMEWS, Ballistic Missile Early Warning System at Thule, Greenland. This room is the nerve center of Site 1, the focal point of site operations. And yet it isn't usually included in official tours of the facility. Main reason? It's classified. The first thing visitors see when they come to the site are these famous detection radar reflectors. You can't hide them anyway, since they're larger than a football field and weigh about 3 million pounds apiece. The visitors also learn that there's a tracking radar inside that radome that would tip the scales at 200 tons. They're duly impressed by all this, and they should be. Visitors would also be shown the 13 major buildings here, housing transmitters, scanners, and support functions. Of course, the most interesting sites are inside the buildings. This passageway tunnel connects all work areas and makes it possible to operate year-round, regardless of the weather outside. The tour will probably make its first stop at one of the transmitter buildings to have a look at these powerful transmitter units, which operate with an output of millions of watts. This kind of power requires vacuum tubes that have more resemblance to telephone poles than to ordinary tubes. They're 9 feet tall, weigh 850 pounds, and are water-cooled, the largest tubes made in the United States today. The receivers are so sensitive they can detect signals in the millimicrowatt range, a few billionths of a single watt. They like to tell the visitors that if the transmitted signal were compared to the Earth in volume, the received signal would be about the size of a golf ball. Some people are bound to ask what all that ducting is for. Those are waveguides that pipe the radar energy from the transmitters out to the antennas and back again to the receivers. There are 35 miles of waveguides here at Site 1 alone. Here and there are switches in the waveguide network, which give BMEWS a highly flexible changeover capability in case of equipment malfunction. From here, the energy is piped to one of the scanner buildings, where it enters the rotating output switch. This switch has 88 outlets at the top and 88 at the bottom that carry the energy outside to the reflector. Looking inside the switch, you can see one of the apertures scanning past the open ends of the waveguides. The idea is to project 2 fan-shaped beams of radar energy, one above the other, out into space. Any missile or satellite launched in the Soviet Union has to pass through one or more of these fans in the BMEWS network, because we've got them covered like a blanket, with Site 1 at Thule, Site 2 at Clear, Alaska, and Site 3 at Fylingdales Moor, England. By the time any object has passed through both fans, computers have worked up a pretty good case history on it. They know where it came from and where it's headed. They've told the people in the TOR, and if they were suspicious of it, rung some alarms in NORAD, SAC, and the Pentagon. But to get on with the tour, here's an antenna that doesn't just sit there looking out into space like the big reflectors. It moves around. Meet the tracking radar. This is used to track individual objects, suspicious ones mostly, to get a continuous reading on them. Occasionally, when they're having trouble with one of the fans in a detection radar, they'll throw in the tracker to replace it temporarily. The tracker has its own transmitter. The receiver, a parametric amplifier, utilizes a miniature waveguide system. The $2 tour would also include a stop at the Tracking Radar Automatic Monitoring Room, called TRAM, with the Maintenance Console, TRMC. This console tells the operator at a glance how the tracking radar complex is performing. Incidentally, the detection radars have an automatic monitoring setup too, called DRAM, and also their own maintenance console, DRMC. These systems that monitor performance of BMEWS equipment are hooked into the Central System Monitoring Room, the CSMR, where the operational status of all elements is displayed on this illuminated panel. When a malfunction occurs, the equipment controller, or EC, can spot it on the panel and either switch over to standby equipment or initiate maintenance to recover complete radar coverage. Any loss of threat detection and warning capability is reported immediately to BMEWS user commands. The visitors to BMEWS are naturally curious about what happens when the radar beams hit something out there and bounce back into the system. In the early days of radar, the man watching the scope would probably be the only one who saw the return and would have to make the diagnosis all by himself. Today, especially in BMEWS, he has plenty of help. Let's look at some of it. Take this stack of hardware, for example. They call it the Doppler filter bank. When it gets a return from the receiver, it can tell by the increasing or decreasing frequency whether the object is approaching or receding from the antenna. The Doppler effect, the same effect by which the shift in frequency of light from a distant star tells astronomers whether that star is approaching or receding from the Earth. Another equipment complex without which BMEWS could not function is the DRDTO, for Detection Radar Data Takeoff Computer. Call it DTO for short. The tracker has one just like it. This computer works in conjunction with one called the Missile Impact Predictor, or MIP, to analyze the threat potential of target returns on all real-world objects. Of course, you can't see what goes on inside these boxes, but if you could, it might look something like this. DTO's job is to sort out and evaluate returns sent down through channels. Every time a sector is scanned, a display is presented, usually just of noise or clutter, but occasionally of a real-world object. If DTO detects a target, it generates a report consisting of range, azimuth, range rate, and other vital statistics, and gives the report to MIP. It keeps sending reports to MIP with every sweep of the beam as long as the object remains in the fan. MIP averages out these reports to determine the object's location in space at a given moment in time, a fix on the target called a Q point. It now puts the Q point through discrimination tests to determine its threat potential, if any. If it qualifies as a threat, it's called a single fan event. In a two-fan event, both Q points must correlate and pass further discrimination tests to produce launch and impact data. The $2 tour might well end here in the computer department, and the visitors would be duly impressed by all of this automatic detection and warning equipment, and they should be. After a tour like this, it's easy to get the idea that BMEWS' reliability as a detection and warning system is entirely due to its highly sophisticated radar and computer equipment. But that's not quite true. A mission as vital as this must also rely upon the human brain, the human eye, and human judgment-making capability. Which brings us back where we started, to the men in the TOR. These men work in crews of 8 on 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day. They are charged with the responsibility of assuring that the equipment at Site 1 is functioning properly and that its detection and warning capability is maintained at its maximum potential at all times. The senior duty officer in the TOR is the Space Surveillance Officer, known as the SSO. Next to him at the Data Analysis Console is the Space Surveillance Monitor, or SSM. From their positions, they can monitor the Detection Radar Environmental Display Consoles 1 and 2, the Analyzer, Dread Consoles 3 and 4, and the Tracking Radar Central Control Console. Overall system detection capability would be difficult to check were it not for a rather continuous flow of space satellite traffic through its range of coverage. Dread operators monitor these objects using satellite prediction sheets, which forecast the estimated time of arrival, the fan, range, azimuth, probability of detection, and object number. In accomplishing this, BMEWS renders an important service to USAF Space Track. There's a satellite coming up now, number 0823. And it's right on time. That small circle on the scope signifies that the DTO is processing data on the object. The large circle indicates that MIP has formed a Q point. So far, so good. But what happens when an object fails to show up as expected? Of course, it may have decayed, or it may be due to equipment malfunction. What do the men in this room do when they believe the system's detection and warning capability has, for some reason, failed? The man with the answers in this case is the SSO.
Max 22, read you 555. Roger. I was just making my hourly radio check with a SAC aircraft upstairs. There's always one of them up there, circling over the site. Now, in the event that our normal means of communication with NORAD should fail, we can always contact him and he'll relay our messages. Now, as for your questions on non-routine operating procedures here in the TOR, I think the best answer is to show you a few typical situations. Now, you may not understand all the terms or abbreviations, but you will get a good general idea of the whole picture. Now, let's say that the operator on Dread Console number 2, over there, failed to detect a certain satellite listed on his prediction sheet. Here's what happens.
No show. Beam 5, object 947.
MIT, verify the cues in Sector 2 upper.
Roger, stand by.
No cues in Sector 2 upper.
Thank you. You see, we missed one SDE object in Sector 2 upper. MET verified no cues. Can you put up a parallel beam?
One moment, please. No spare RF group available. Exchanging suspect equipment with Sector 1 upper. Switch equipments between beams 5 and 1. Sector 2 upper is now covered. Dram, would you check out equipment in beam 1?
Roger, check beam 1.
I must now make an equipment status report on a suspected degradation to the NORAD Missile Warning Officer, the MWO. MWO, we have a worst case red in Sector 1, upper. Investigation in progress. Right. We're going to run the test target array now. This simulates a pattern of targets in space. Now, whenever we suspect a malfunction, we run this to check out the percentage of operability of every beam in the system. Okay, run the TTA. We'll be getting a report from the CSMR on this TTA in just a moment.
Beam 1, course range block 4, has a PD of 10%. Overall PD of Beam 1 is 60%.
Right. Beam 1, 60%. Replace Sector 1 upper with tracker. Flat scan, high elevation. Place the tracker in Sector 1 upper. Flat scan, high elevation. Investigation in progress. That was the missile warning officer at NORAD that I was reporting to. Excuse me. SSO.
Faulty IF in Beam 1. Unscheduled maintenance in progress. Estimate recovery in 30 minutes. No spare IFs available.
Roger. I'll have to make another status report to the MWO. Faulty IF in Sector 1 upper. Etro 30 minutes. Message will follow. I want to emphasize the vital importance of reporting degradation and equipment status to the MWO. Now, in this case, the dread operator was alert. But what if he hadn't noticed an SDE object missing from his sector? We'd all be working along thinking that everything in the system was functioning properly. And so would the people who depend on BMEWS for a minimum warning time of 15 minutes in case of a mass missile raid. What if a raid had been in progress and the operator hadn't noticed and reported the malfunction? That's something I'd rather not think about. Another problem we have is caused by excessive interference. Now let's see what happens in a case like that.
Interference Sector 1, Beam 4. DTO is forming on the noise. Checks external.
Beam gate that. EC, external interference, Sector 1, Beam 4.
Roger.
Dread Operator 1 is now going to call DRAM to determine if his interference is in the vertical or horizontal channel.
DRAM, Sector 1, Beam 4. Terminate horizontal. Restore. Terminate vertical. Restore. Interference checks in the vertical channel. DTO, I have excessive noise in Beam 4. Give me the Doppler filter numbers affected.
Roger. Dread, my scope indicates excessive noise affecting Doppler filter 63.
Filter 63 in Beam 4 is affected.
I'm reporting down south to the MWO. Confirming 1 lower environment status red. External interference. This is the SSO. Condition Bravo. Condition Bravo. Condition Bravo is a code phrase for unknown external interference. DRAM and DTO, confirm vertical channel and Doppler filter 63.
Roger, confirm vertical channel Beam 4. Doppler filter 63.
DTO, blank switches affecting filter 63.
Roger. Blank switches 15, 16, and 17 on DTO 2.
Right. (15, 16, and 17 blanked.
Double SM, filter 63 has been blanked.
Dread 1 on gate, Beam 4. As you can see, we still have a build on the interference. DTO, we still have noise in Beam 4. Restore the blanking switches for filter 63. Use the blanking switches for filter 65.
Roger.
Restore blanking switches 15, 16, and 17. Use blanking switches for filter 65. 18, 19, and 20 blanked.
Double SM, filter 65 is blanked.
That guided bill has disappeared.
Okay, run the test target array.
Beam 4 has a PD of 70%.
DTO, restore blanking switches for filter 65.
Roger. Restore the switches for filter number 65.
Restored.
Double SM, the switches for filter 65 have been restored.
Dread 1, go green on environment operability status.
Slight interference, no build.
I'm reporting to the MWO. Sector 1 lower environment status is now green. Interference slight, no build. Analyzer readings are erratic on bearing, but on frequency. Cause remains unknown, but not considered to be ECM. ECM, that's electronic countermeasures. Jamming, in other words.
Interference is faded.
This next announcement will be to everybody on the tech site. This is the SSO. All clear. Return to normal operation. The actions you have seen by the DRDTO and tram operators will be accomplished in the future by the console operators through the use of switch actions on the wing panels. The analyzer is also a new addition to our electronic countermeasures equipment. That's the end of that particular story. There is another, however, the story of what could happen. You are now going to see what a mass missile raid would look like. First, let me explain that the phrase Operation Confidence activates the conference loop with the same men as we had on the line before. They will assist me in determining the degree of confidence or reliability of MIPS reports on launch and impact. The degree of confidence that I report to the MWO will be based on how well we think the system is operating. All right, the masked missile raid tape has been started.
Uncorrelated targets, 4 lower.
Uncorrelated target, sector 1 lower.
Uncorrelated target, sector 2 lower.
Uncorrelated targets, 3 lower. Targets in the upper fan. Targets now in 3 upper.
Launch and impact areas will now be appearing on the BMEWS display at the NORAD Combat Operations Center. This is the SSO. Implement Operation Confidence. MWO, Operation Confidence in progress. I'm going on the comm loop now. RCS, do you have anything for us? TRDTO? Tram? EC?
All systems okay.
Roger. MWO, all equipment's operable. Visual confirmation of uncorrelated targets. System confidence is high. We now have 40 impacts. Time to go is 13 minutes from now.
Roger, Site 1. NORAD, this is the MWO. Site 1 reports high confidence and verifies 40 impacts. Earliest time is 12 minutes and 30 seconds. I repeat.
That's the missile warning officer at ENT Control Center calling NORAD. This is the senior NORAD controller calling SAC and the Pentagon.
Repeat. Site 1 reports system confidence is high and verifies 40 impacts. Earliest time to go is 12 minutes.
Generally speaking, that's how a mass raid would be handled here in the TOR. Of course, everything is much more complicated. But as far as BMEWS is concerned, as soon as we deliver the information into the proper hands, our responsibility ends.
Thank you, Major. If the raid we have just witnessed had been real, our missile force would by now have been readied and all alert aircraft safely airborne, a response made possible by early detection and warning of the attack. And that is the BMEWS mission, a mission with a built-in reliability guarantee.